So, good morning, students. We'll continue again with unit number 1 and topic number 2, which is phases of a construction project, its method of execution and agencies involved. Regarding this topic, we have already seen videos in our last class. So, today we'll go through the notes, the lectures. First one, phases of a project. A construction project entails or encompasses 5 important stages. First, number 1, initiation. Number 2, planning. Number 3, implementation and execution. 4, performance and monitoring. And 5 is closing. This is the construction life cycle. These 5 plans makes it a construction life cycle. Next, initiation. So if you are a project manager and you aren't sure where to begin, you should start by evaluating the work ahead and conduct a feasibility test. So what does the feasibility test do? It examines whether the proposed solutions align with the main objects. From a broad perspective, defines the project and writes down the possible solutions to specific needs. We do not make the decision alone. You have to consult your team, ensure that a final recommended solution is identified, and once you give the project a green light, you create a project initiation document, which is known as PID. A project initiation document is like a blueprint. It highlights the main purpose of the construction project. Next, number 2, planning. So planning is the key to the successful management of a single location or multi-location project. At this point in the construction life cycle, you and your team should define or identify the scope of the work, which develops a roadmap. You have to identify the resources needed and the strategy of producing them. Every set goal must be SMART. SMART meaning specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. They should also be clear. Clear meaning collaborative, limited in scope, emotional, appreciable, and refinable. A plan outlining the time frames, tasks, and dependencies comes in handy at this phase. The budget should provide cost estimates for materials, labor, and equipment. Number 3, implementation or execution. This is where most of your time should be spent. A project plan has to be put into practice. Effective communication plays a huge role during execution. Ensure that the budget stipulated in the planning is followed. As you watch the progress of the project, record any variation at the initial plan. So, a successful implementation stage is characterized by a well developed team, allocation of resources, task assignments, implementation of project management plans, status meetings, updated project schedule, tracking systems in place, and modification of project plans. Next, performance and monitoring. This stage happens simultaneously with the implementation process. Performance and monitoring ensure that every item aligns with the project schedule. It is therefore a regular phase that ought to be revisited during execution. Every activity of a commercial construction process, from start to finish, should align with the project management plan. The best tools to use at this stage are the KPIs or the key performance indicators. The examples of key performance indicators or KPIs are effort and cost tracking. It determines if the budget is on track. Project performance monitors the changes and unforeseen challenges. Quality deliverables determines if certain task deliverables have been fulfilled. Project objectives determines whether the project goals and schedule are met. Last step, closing. This is the final step. So the final step is important as it offers the deliverables to the client. Review the punch list to see that all the weak areas have been accomplished. Inform your team and hand over the documents to your franchise operations. So before terminating supplier contracts, review termination provisions and give written notice. Finally, you have to conduct a study to examine the lessons learned and identify what went as planned and where things didn't go well. So this analysis can be useful for future project teams. Agencies involved. Indian government has constituted a judicial committee and also a SIT. It may be worthwhile for SCFI to send recommendations to the bodies on the issue of role of various agencies. There are at least 4 groups involved in any construction project. First one, the builder. He is the financer. He must get approval of government agencies. He should be to any recommendations made by structural engineer and compromise on the safety. He should be then free from litigation costs due to negligence of others. Number 2, the architect. It is required law that he must prepare plans. He should not veto if structural engineer insists on modifying sections if analysis warrants. The architect should then be free from litigation. 3, structural engineer, the person with the responsibility for accepting the responsibility of constructing the entire structure. So he has to state the conditions. No interference from builder to compromise on the design and execution. No interference from architect to adopt undersized sections. So these are the conditions that a structural engineer should abide by. Next, method of execution. The execution phase will broadly involve the following actions. The priority or sequence is entirely dependent on the nature of the project and organizational practices and preferences, but nevertheless they are performed to enable successful project execution. Acquire, develop, and manage the team who will work on the project, execute project scope, recommend changes, bug fixes, preventive and corrective actions coming from the planning, executing, and monitoring and controlling process groups or teams, timely communication with all stakeholders, implemented, approve changes to the processes, documentation, and plans, team building exercises. Give recognition or rewards to team members and keep them motivated. Hold status review meetings to ensure project is on track and any deviations are attended to at the earliest. Use work authorization systems to allocate work. Request seller responses to your tender and outsourcing needs. Select seller for your procurement needs. So that's all for this lecture. Give your attendance in the chat box with your name and enrollment ID, and also we'll go through videos related to this lecture, a few more videos related to this lecture. Till then, thank you.
seepage, and so on. So now, how much should the defect liability period be is an open question, and different projects may have different liability periods. Also, a question is, when does the defect liability period start? For example, if the project starts at time t is equal to 0, it takes 3 years to complete. And then we are talking about a defect liability period. So obviously, even those parts of the structure which were built in the initial phase of the project cannot have their defect liability period starting from when they were completed. Most of the time we would say that after the project has been completed, only then the defect liability period comes into play. So these are small things which one must remember, one must be very careful, because these are all things which are likely to be the causes for any dispute that may arise with the contractors at any point in time. So moving forward, let's talk of a letter of intent and a performance guarantee. Now, at the end of the process of handling the bids that have come from the notice inviting tender, the client identifies the agency to whom the work is to be awarded. How it is done, we will take it up later, and issues what is called a letter of intent. Now, that letter of intent is essentially a formal invitation to one of the bidders that yes, we are intending to award this job to you. So till that time, the person or that agency is still a bidder. It has not become the contractor, and that's the semantics part of it. Now, what does the letter of intent contain? It invites the bidder to deposit a performance guarantee, let's say 5% of the award value. Now, please see, we are now talking about the award value. Earlier, we were talking about the estimated value. So the estimated value was prepared by the client, and the EMD was based on that estimate. Now, when we have issued the LOI, we are talking about the award value. So if the estimated cost was, let's say, 100, the EMD at 2% of this would be 2. But if the award is being given at, let's say, 105, then the performance guarantee will be 5% of 105 and not 100. So that's a small point that I would like you to take note of. The letter of intent also calls upon the bidder to mobilize, get started with their preparations and commence work. Now, since the time of the project is precisely defined in the contract, or it's given in the notice inviting tender also, the date of commencement is a very important date. Now, what should be the date of commencement? That usually is given in the letter of intent. Typically, it could be 15 days from the issue of the letter of intent, or 1 month from the issue of the letter of intent, and so on. So all these details, in fact, are part of the conditions of the contract, which the bidder already knows from the details of the document available on the website of the client. Now, this performance guarantee is obviously released after the issue of the completion certificate by the client, if the performance, time, safety, and so on during the execution is found to be satisfactory. So basically what is happening is that if a job has been awarded for 105 with an estimated cost of 100, there will be a certain amount of money which will be withheld, and the payment will not be made to the tune of 105 immediately after the completion of the project. Some of it will be paid only after the completion of the defect liability period, and so on and so forth. So all these things are already known to the bidders when they submit their bids, and they make their bids keeping these kind of things in mind. Now let me talk a little bit about the evaluation of bids and identifications of a contractor. Now, the bids may be evaluated on the basis of lowest cost alone. So at the end of it, we can say that, okay, here is a project, 5 people bid for it, and depending on whosoever is the lowest bidder, we award the job to that person and issue him what is called the letter of intent. That's what you were talking about in the last slide. Having said that, though we can award the job to the person or the bidder with the lowest bid, we must make sure that the bidder is technically competent, financially sound, and so on. So this has to be ensured through an examination of technical competence, financial soundness, safety record, and so on. So all this is part of the evaluation process that goes on. Of course, we can award the job to the bidder with the lowest bid, but we must make sure that the person is technically competent, financially sound, has the right kind of a safety record, and so on. So all this has to be a part of the evaluation process. So now, either we do that on a case-to-case basis for each of the contracts that we award, or it can be done through a process of empanelment. So this empanelment exactly is the kind of thing which we referred to earlier, that the client invites people or invites bidders to submit their documents so that for a period of time, that is the validity of the empanelment, for that period, different bidders, they submit documents which establishes their competence. Now, once that is done, then we can indeed go for the lowest bid. Else, it has to be submission of appropriate documents. With each bid, the people have to submit their proofs of technical competence, financial soundness, and so on. Now, apart from the lowest cost system, we can have a system where bids are invited in two parts, technical and financial, which are opened separately. Now, the technical bid does not contain any financial details, and obviously that gives only information about the technical competence. It could include financial soundness and so on, everything, other than how much it is going to cost for that particular project, or how much is the money which the bidder is going to take from the client for that particular project. So once we have this so-called two-bid system, initially we carry out what is called the technical evaluation. And then, having carried out the technical evaluation, we open the financial bids. So typically, technical bids are opened first, and after a certain amount of time, then the financial bids are opened. Financial bids are usually opened for only those bidders which qualify technically. It makes no sense for us to even know what was the bid of a bidder who does not have the technical competence. So those bids are summarily returned and rejected. So only those bidders whose technical bids are found in order, their financial bids are opened. Now, in this process now, evaluation can be based on only the cost for the technically qualified bidders, or it could be based on a composite score based on evaluation of technical and financial bids. In the next class, we'll go through an example where this concept.
Hello friends, welcome to Operations Point. Today in this video, we will be discussing about project execution plan. Right now, this is the project execution plan. This is the part of like when we have to implement the project. Before implementation of the project, we need to make certain documents, and this document is one of those documents. Now, what this document says. Now, projects, they can be like an endless road if you don't have a great execution plan. ठीक है, अब आप कोई project शुरू करना चाहते हो, उस project को मतलब implement करना चाहते हो, लेकिन आपके पास कोई strategy नहीं है कि वो project आप कैसे implement करोगे, फाइन कौन क्या काम करेगा, कितना रिसोर्स है, ये सब अगर आप प्लान नहीं करोगे एग्जीक्यूशन के लिए, तो it will be like walking on an empty road without any kind of the milestones. Now, you people must be aware about this thing that these days whenever we travel on the way to our journey, there in the on the way there are a lot of milestones, right? These milestones, they help us to know that how much distance we have covered or how far the destination is yet. Fine, so this gives a kind of a motivation to us that this much distance we have covered and this much is still left. So same is the case with the projects also, कि जब हम कोई project को implement करते हैं, right, तो उस project को हमें measure करना पड़ता है कि हमने कितना project मतलब कितने targets project में achieve कर लिए हैं और कितना मतलब हमारा percentage जो है वो still left है. Now, it is much more than a chart showing timescales. It is a document describing how, when, and by whom a specific target or set of targets is to be achieved. These targets will include projects, products, timescales, cost, quality, and benefits. ठीक है, तो ये जो प्रोजेक्ट है हम इसमें बात करते हैं प्रोडक्ट्स की कि कौन से प्रोडक्ट्स बनेंगे, इनकी टाइमलाइंस क्या होगी, हर चीज़ की कॉस्ट क्या होगी, क्वालिटी कितना मेंटेन करना है और बेनिफिट्स क्या होंगे. इट विल डू दिस बाय शोइंग मेजर प्रोडक्ट्स, एक्टिविटीज एंड रिसोर्सेज रिक्वायर्ड फॉर द प्रोजेक्ट. Now, this is the governing document that establishes the means to execute, monitor and control the projects. इस प्लान की हेल्प से हम एग्जीक्यूशन कर सकते हैं कि हमें क्या करना है, what step is the next step. और इससे हम ये भी मॉनिटर कर सकते हैं कि whatever we are doing or whatever our team members are doing, are they doing it in the right direction or not. The plan, it serves as the main communication vehicle to ensure that everyone is aware and knowledgeable of project objectives and how they will be accomplished. It's a kind of a document जो हर team member को pass on किया जाता है so that उनको पता हो कि हमें क्या क्या objectives achieve करने हैं. Now, what are the major elements of project execution plan? The first one is the scope definition, statements, quality and technical specifications, resource allocation, project scheduling, organizational considerations. These are the 6 elements of project execution plan. The first is the scope. We need to define the scope of the project. अब project का let's suppose अगर objective है, we want to upgrade the information technology infrastructure in the organization. तो ये प्रोजेक्ट है. अब इसमें स्कोप क्या होगा कि अगर हमें इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर अपडेट करना है तो उसमें हम क्या क्या इंक्लूड करेंगे. स्कोप क्या होगा, जैसे कि वी विल बी प्रोवाइडिंग अ न्यू कंप्यूटर ऑन एवरी डेस्क with all the appropriate softwares installed and ready to operate and each computer linked through a network. ठीक है, तो this will be the scope. Now, statement of goals. This will list out what are the project requirements such as deliverables, project objectives क्या होंगे, milestones क्या होंगे और इसका life cycle कैसा होगा. It will also explain why the project is carried out, the purpose served by the project and what will be the expected benefits from the project. Now, the next thing they will be like making it clear is what will be the challenges the project may face in the future, what will be the risk of the projects, what will be the cost and how the project do we have any plan to to control those risks. Then quality and technical specifications. While the project scope and statement of goals, they make the project output clear. एक important element है quality और technical specifications. क्वालिटी हमें स्पेसिफाई करनी पड़ेगी कि वो प्रोजेक्ट की जो भी डिलीवरेबल्स होंगे, प्रोडक्ट्स होंगे, उनकी क्वालिटी कैसी होगी, बेंचमार्क क्या है एंड व्हाट विल बी द टेक्निकल एक्सपर्टीज विच इज़ रिक्वायर्ड, टेक्नोलॉजी कौन सी चाहिए, वो सब हमें स्पेसिफाई करना पड़ेगा. Now, clear and precise definition for concept and terms, measurable description. We need to describe it in the measurable terms. जैसे कि हम कहते हैं लेटेस्ट कंप्यूटर्स अगर हम इंस्टॉल करेंगे तो दिस इज नॉट मेजरेबल समथिंग. अब लेटेस्ट कंप्यूटर्स क्या डेफिनेशन क्या है उसकी, प्रोबेबली इट विल बी अ 16 GB रैम और उसका कोर प्रोसेसर की कुछ तुम बात कर रहे हो तो वो सब उस वे में होना चाहिए. Attainable standards, for instance, upgrade all the computers in the office to dual core processors and 16 GB memory within 2 weeks. It is an attainable goal. But upgrade all the computers to dual core and 16 GB memory overnight to ensure this is not attainable. Within 2 weeks, every upgradation is possible. But if you are saying overnight target should be achieved, this is not achievable, right? So we should set the targets which can be attained by the employees or by the team members. Now, time bound होना चाहिए. Upgrade the computer soon. This is something which is not making us clear कि कब होगा. Soon का मतलब क्या है, किसी के लिए 1 day होगा, 2 days होंगे, कितना time है. अगर if we are saying upgrade the computers within 2 weeks, so this is a precise definition. The level of quality desired in the project usually depends upon the project budget, which is usually determined by the customer. Obviously, more the customer is willing to pay, the more quality we can assure to the customers. Then allocation of resources. Now, allocation of resources is to achieve the stated goals and quality standards. Whatever resources are required, we need to collect those resources. Those resources, they can be the staff, the people, team members, the skill sets, probably the technology if you require to achieve those goals. money to buy equipment, and time considerations. Next is project scheduling. Now, project scheduling is, this is the example of the Gantt charts. Gantt charts, this helps you to understand what is the timeline of each activity, that when this activity will start and how long this activity is going to take, and is there any other activity which we can start along with this in parallel, right? So all these will be shown to the team members with the help of the diagram. The diagram should be easily understandable and readable. Now, the best approach is, what we do is we divide the project into small activities, and then what we define the time period of all these activities, that this particular activity will take how long. And for scheduling the projects, we have Gantt charts, and we have CPM and PERT method also. This probably you must be doing in your MBA also as an operation research subject or management science, or in the project management also we have this technique CPM and PERT, right? These methods are used to understand the scheduling, or to understand how long the project is going to take, or what will be the probability of completion of the project within the given time frame. Next is the organizational considerations, details of the project manager and other key personnel responsible for different aspects of the project. Now, whatever the work is required, we need to specify those in the front of project manager and other persons who are responsible for the same. Decision making authority for specific components of the project. Now, reporting relationship should be specified कि team members ने किसको report करना है. General approach of undertaking the project, whether the project should have a dedicated team or it should be a matrix type of organizational structure, क्या होना चाहिए. Method of coordination and reporting कैसे होगी, एक दूसरे से communication कैसे होगा, और project को हम monitor कैसे करेंगे, और जो भी project का status होगा वो updates हम कैसे एक दूसरे को pass on करेंगे. So this